My name is Grace. I was once a quiet woman, a teacher, a mother. I believed in the law. I believed in goodness. I believed that evil stayed far away from decent homes. I was wrong. Amara came into my life when she was only 9. She was not my blood, but from the first day I held her hands, she became my child. I watched her grow. I watched her dream. I watched her become the light of our home. Every morning, I woke before everyone else. I cooked. I prayed. I watched her rush out with her school bag and big hope in her eyes. I always believed that as long as a child goes to school, the world will be kind to her. Amara loved to laugh. She loved music. She loved life. She dressed for a school party. I remember standing beside her, correcting her clothes, warning her as all mothers do. I remember her smile. I remember the way she looked back at me like she would return in minutes. I watched her leave. That was the last time I saw my daughter as a whole person. While I waited at home, cooking, checking the clock, the world I trusted was already tearing her apart. While I prayed for her safety, danger had already wrapped its hands around her. Late into the night, fear entered my chest. Her phone stopped going through. The hours stretched. My heart would not rest. A mother's spirit knows when something is wrong. That night, my spirit screamed. Somewhere on a lonely road, my child was thrown out of a moving car like she was nothing, like she was trash. The car did not stop. The world did not stop. Only her body did. When the call came, I ran. I ran as though my legs were fighting death itself. Inside the hospital, I saw my daughter lying still, broken, silent, weak. Tubes everywhere, blood everywhere. My child who left the house smiling returned as a stranger. In one moment, I lost my peace. In one moment, I lost my sleep. In one moment, I lost the woman I used to be. That night, as I held her cold fingers, I made a promise inside my heart. A promise I did not understand yet. A promise that would change my life forever. I was still a mother that night, but I had already begun to become something else. And that was only the beginning. Outside the hospital, I could hear the murmurs, the whispers, the rising anger. People had already begun to see the injustice. A crowd gathered, their eyes full of accusation, their voices full of rage. The world, I realized, was awake now to what had happened, but that did not make it easier to breathe. I felt helpless, like a leaf caught in a storm I could not control. The boys, the ones who had taken her from me, were arrested. I heard about it before I could see them. I imagined them, smug and confident, walking into a station that would try to make them accountable. And I hated that even this small victory felt hollow. They were rich, they were protected, and the law was still fragile. I stayed by her side all night. I watched her shallow breaths. I watched the machines mark every tiny pulse. I prayed quietly, not for justice. I had learned too soon that the world does not always reward the righteous, but for her survival, for her to wake and tell me that this nightmare was only a dream. Somewhere, the city slept. Somewhere, the streets were quiet. But inside me, the storm had only begun. I knew the night would end. I knew morning would come, but I also knew that when the sun rose, my life would be forever changed. I could not go back to the woman I had been, and I could not yet see the path that would take me to what I would have to become. That night, the law had started to move. The world had begun to whisper. But a mother's heart, already knew that the quietest battles would be fought far from the eyes of the law. When morning came, the city looked normal. Cars moved, people went to work, children laughed on their way to school. Yet my own child lay between life and death, and 4 young men sat somewhere protected by power. They brought the case to court quickly. I thought speed meant seriousness. I thought it meant they were afraid of the truth. Inside that room, I watched men in fine suits speak in heavy words. I watched files move from one hand to another. I watched faces that looked concerned, but felt empty. Everything sounded official. Everything looked important, yet nothing felt just. They spoke of evidence. They spoke of witnesses. They spoke of procedure. They spoke of time. But in all their perfect language, no one spoke of my daughter's pain. I felt hope rise inside me for a moment. It was weak, fragile, but it was still hope. I told myself, the law has seen this evil, the law will act. Then the delays began. Documents went missing. Witnesses suddenly became uncertain. Statements changed. Details blurred. Truth grew tired. I heard whispers long before I saw proof. Money had started to move. The powerful do not shout. They whisper. They do not run. They slide quietly into every space where justice should stand. They do not fight the law. They buy it. I watched confidence return to the faces of the boys who had been afraid only days before. Their shoulders were straight again. Their eyes were calm. They already knew what the rest of us were yet to learn. The day the case was dismissed, I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not fall. I simply felt something die inside me. They said there was not enough evidence. They said the witnesses were unreliable. They said the case could not stand. They said the law had done its best. They lied. Outside the court, the world kept moving. People argued, reporters spoke, cameras flashed. But inside me, everything went silent. I walked home with the weight of that silence pressing on my chest. My daughter still lay broken on a hospital bed, and the men who destroyed her walked free under the protection of the law. That night, I sat alone in the dark. No tears came. No prayers came. Only one question repeated itself inside me like a slow drumbeat. If the law would not speak for my child, who would? It was then I began to understand something terrible. Justice is not always denied. Sometimes it is simply sold. And the moment justice became a product, I knew I would someday become something the law could not control.